After questions from the audience and moderator, candidates will present 1-minute closing statements. So you have to summarize everything you'll do for the city in 60 seconds. Mr. Treece, you may make your opening statement.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. Now more than ever, Columbia needs steady leadership to continue the progress that we've made. In the last 3 years, we've added over 1,000 new jobs. We've strengthened and protected our neighborhoods. We've restored confidence in a government that is open, honest, and transparent. But there's still more work to do. I'm so proud of everything that we've accomplished in the last 3 years. First, I initiated a transparency policy that the council approved unanimously that made it easier for the public to access online records and financial data. I fought for the first comprehensive zoning reform package for the first time in 40 years to better protect our neighborhoods. We've added new police officers and 2 new fire stations without raising taxes. In fact, I led the effort to defeat a property tax increase without a vote of the people. And I led the call for a state performance audit because it's our responsibility to make the city as efficient as possible. 3 years ago, I promised to make our economy and our democracy work for everybody. And that's why I'm committed to women and equity and diversity. I'm a little bit late to tonight's forum because we just hosted our annual board and commission reception, where I was proud to announce that since I was elected in April of 2016, we've appointed over 200 qualified and talented women to city boards and commissions, including the first 2 women to serve on the Water and Light Advisory Board since it was created in 1964. When I was elected 3 years ago, Columbia had a C- on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. But because of pro-equality and non-discrimination policies, we've now earned a perfect score the last 2 years in a row. We're one of only 2 cities in the state and one of only 78 in the country to have that distinction. And in today's political reality, it's more important than ever that Columbia be a welcoming and open community, because our economy responds enthusiastically. People want to send their kids to school here. They want to create jobs here. They want to move here. I'm running for mayor to continue the progress we've made. And I look forward to talking about the issues tonight.
Thank you very much. Chris Kelly.
Thank you for sponsoring the forum. The League has been a leader both locally and nationally for the advancement of public discourse. Columbia faces some significant problems. I would like to contribute to the solutions. First, public confidence in our police department is not what it should be. The department suffers from low morale. We do not have enough officers and they are insufficiently paid. We have an absolute responsibility and an unusual opportunity to substantially reduce our carbon footprint. We should face up to the need to provide dependable transportation to those who are not able to transport themselves. The city's relationship with the sister governments is at an all-time low. We also face serious ethical challenges in the office of mayor. It was a direct conflict of interest for the mayor to lobby for his client, the Teamsters Union, against a plan to allow the city and the school district to provide transportation to students. It's especially troubling because he then took a $12,500 political action committee check from the Teamsters Union. Medicaid fraud is an extremely serious matter. It was wrong for the mayor to lobby for a client which was in the business of Medicaid fraud and to be paid $900,000 over 9 years for that work in direct violation of the federal law. I've been elected 12 previous times, and none of those have I ever criticized my opponent. I do so now because I believe these matters before the voters present a significant threat to the integrity of our community, which has been very good to me and which I love. The League knows of my record of accomplishment and ethical performance in office. These are skills I have demonstrated over the past 40 years, and they are what the City of Columbia needs today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to questions for our candidates, and you will have 1 minute to answer each question. We will rotate who gets the question first, and I'm going to, in political speak, this is what is known as a softball question. But I think it's a good place to start. What do you believe is the greatest challenge for anyone serving as mayor, and what leadership strength would you bring to the table to solve it? Brian Treece, you're first.
you know, after 3 years, I think there's a sweet spot to be in this office where you have to be old enough to have the time to do the job and young enough to have the energy to do it. And, you know, as I have balanced the issues today and every weekend and every day for the last 3 years, I'm proud of that level of energy that I've brought to this attention, or brought the attention to bear on the challenges facing Columbia. And, you know, I think the accomplishments that we've seen when it comes to our strategic plan and social equity and the city finances and our public safety and our diversity initiatives that we've done in the last 36 months show for it.
Thank you very much. Chris Kelly?
The issue is, how do you bring people of diverse backgrounds together to work together for a common goal? If you remember Nancy Cruzan, and many of you do, the issue there was how to write a document that John Ashcroft, the Catholic Conference, and the Missouri Bar Association could all agree with. It took me an entire session to do that, to bring those different forces together. But we did it, and in the last week of the session, that bill passed. You should not vote for me because I did that. You should vote for me because that's an indication of the ability to bring people of vastly different points of view together on critical issues of public policy and get the job done.
Thank you very much. I think this one goes to Chris Kelly first. How should policing in Columbia look different 5 years from now?
First of all, the morale of the officers in the department should be better. Second, the pay of the officers should be better. Third, there should be more officers on the street. Fourth, the perception of the community should be better. I believe the perception of the community will give us the tools we need to put together the money to make those other things happen. And I think that perception will be created. I'm very pleased with the leadership that the new chief, the interim chief, is providing. And I think that if we keep moving in that direction, we will be in a position to lead, to raise the significant funds we need to reestablish the ethical and competent and professional police department we had when I was a judge.
Thank you very much. Brian Treece?
Well, I said the same thing 3 years ago, and that's why I led the effort to add more police officers without raising taxes. I rewarded police officers with 5 years of service or more with a significant pay increase that they had been promised years ago that moved to midpoint. Time and time again, we asked the city manager to manage the police chief for better results. When he didn't do that, the council unanimously went a different direction. We're now seeing the benefits of having a new police chief, albeit an interim police chief. I've seen more community policing in the last 3 weeks than I've seen in the last 3 years of my term. Crime is down, morale is up. We need to continue that leadership. Our police officers crave steady leadership right now. And I'm not willing to put public safety at risk. You know, 3 years ago, I promised to lead a community dialogue to make Columbia the inclusive and diverse community we knew it could be. We had town hall meetings in every ward and in the city council lobby. We met every month at Second Missionary Baptist Church to talk about the issues between the community that is served and the police officers and the police department that serves them. Chris wasn't at any of those meetings. The mayor that you select in April will hire the city manager that picks that new police chief, and we need to continue the progress there.
Staying on the theme of the police department, what qualities, and then Brian, this question goes to you first, what qualities are you looking for in a new police chief on a permanent basis?
Well, it's ultimately not what I look for, and as you know, under our charter, the council does not hire the police chief, the city manager does, and so I think that's part of it. But from listening to the community at our community dialogue meetings and our community policing meetings, I think we're on the right track with interim chief Jeff Jones. In his mind, there's not a difference between policing and community policing. We don't need a separate community outreach unit. We need to take those techniques within that community policing model and let it permeate the entire department. I've done a ride-along with police officers, and the discretion that they exercise, the knowledge that they have about this neighborhood that they represent, who's at home when they're not supposed to be, who's not at home when they should be, who's driving the wrong car, why is that car in this neighborhood, all comes from having the consistent and constant repetition and the discretion to be able to do that job and best serve that neighborhood in the way they know how. So I'm going to look for a city manager that will have those attributes in mind when they select that permanent police chief.
Thank you very much. Chris Kelly.
First, Brian's incorrect. I was at 2 of those meetings. Second, Brian's correct when he says it's the job of the manager, and it is critical that we respect our city manager, mayor form of government. However, the way that the manager will approach the hiring of the police chief will significantly inform my decision on who to hire for manager. I think we need to hire a manager who will look for a chief who's going to look for a chief who will instill in his department a respect for every single part of the community and who will reestablish morale and performance in the department.
Thank you very much. This next question starts with you again, Chris. What will be your guiding principle in hiring a city manager?
You start with the prerequisites, right? Financial ability, knowledge of, in our community, knowledge of the kind of utilities we have that a lot of cities don't have. We have an electric utility, for instance. So I think that's kind of a sine qua non, isn't it? Everybody we talk to at that level will have those kinds of things. Then I'm going to look for somebody who is dedicated to diversity and inclusiveness. I'm going to look for somebody who wants to help us change our pattern of development in a positive way. I'm going to look for somebody who's committed to making the kind of changes we need in our carbon footprint, which are absolutely essential to this community and this planet. And I'm going to look for somebody who's committed to making the changes we need to make in our transportation system.
Thank you. Brian Treece.
You know, I think at the end of the day, people want a city manager that can make sure that our trash is picked up, our light switches work, and that our toilets flush. Beyond that, I look for a city manager that embraces transparency, that has a duty of candor to deliver good news and bad news with the same level of enthusiasm when it comes to council asking for the information they've received. A city manager that embraces diversity. And look, we hired the selection firm and developed the characteristics based on a community survey, based on town hall meetings, to help us attract the right individual that can thrive in, let's face it, a pretty robust media market and with a high level of citizen engagement. But this is a major difference between Chris and I. He thinks the new city manager needs to have courage to push back on a city council that is out of line. I want a city manager that is responsive to the voters and the elected representatives that they put on that city council.
Thank you very much. The next question starts with you, Brian. I'm shuffling my cards here. Trying to figure which one I want to give you next. What is your position on using tax incentives to promote economic development? Is it a good investment for taxpayers to make Columbia bigger when we already struggle to fund schools and infrastructure?
I evaluate every tax incentive package based on the level of payback to the community, meaning if the community is going to invest in this economic development project, what is the concomitant payback to that community? And there needs to be a balance there. You know, when it comes to Aurora Organic Dairy, the city's very good at offering discounted land or discounted utilities, but in this respect, they also offer to hire a target workforce from our target neighborhoods so that their workforce reflects the community they serve. I think that is a good opportunity. I've also insisted on clawbacks in every one of these economic development agreements. And where there was no clawback, I voted against it, like the Broadway 2 TIF. But you know, a clawback to me is that if they fail to produce the jobs that they promise, they have to pay the tax money back so that our entire community is benefiting, that we're not subsidizing the development while they privatize the profits.
Thank you very much. Chris?
First, I don't know where Brian got that belief about me and the city manager. I've never said anything that would remotely give rise to that opinion. Next, TIFs. What a TIF means is that a part of the tax is devoted to certain private actors and the development of their particular project. And I suppose there are some limited positive uses for those. But in general, I'm extremely skeptical of them because they transfer property tax and other taxes from the general welfare to the specific narrow area. So I'm going to be extremely skeptical about them. Are there perhaps some worthwhile uses? I'm going to start with an extremely skeptical point of view with regard to them.
Thank you very much. Next question, Chris Kelly will answer first. Do you have plans to improve life for the mentally ill in our community and or have inclusion of the mentally ill in the community?
I don't have a specific plan that the city government should engage in with regard to mental illness. And part of the reason for that is because we can't say grace over all the things we need to do now. It would be politically popular for me to say, as mayor, I have a mental health plan. The fact of the matter is, to some extent, governments need to stay in their lane. Now, because the state is so fundamentally failing at providing mental health and health in general, I think there may be a need for the city to act sometimes. But the truth is, I don't have a mental health agenda for the city of Columbia.
Thank you very much. Brian Treece?
I think Columbia has a very robust healthcare economy, and we have the only inpatient mental health beds outside of Kansas City and St. Louis, so we attract a large population that needs care. I think where the city's role becomes apparent is to cross-train our police officers so that they are trained in crisis intervention, so that when they come across someone that may be in crisis, that we have one of the things I've been asking for is something that is neither a emergency room nor a jail cell, some type of 24-hour hold that we can put people in crisis until they become stabilized, and we can deal with whatever issue, whether that's a law enforcement issue or just a healthcare issue, the next day. So yes, I do think there's a role for city government to deal effectively with this population. The mayor has the power to convene, and pulling all of those providers together with our law enforcement community, I think, makes for a better environment. We want to be an open and welcoming community. A lot of people choose to live here because of the services that our not-for-profit and healthcare system can provide.
Thank you, Brian. The next question starts with you. Is a full-scale audit of the city necessary?
Absolutely.
And does it justify the expense?
Absolutely.
You have more time. Go ahead.
Yes. Are you going to take the other 59 seconds?
Yes, please do.
Look, I was the first person, to call for a state performance audit, and I became aware of certain issues in the city finances that I think merited an independent review. Anytime you have the city finance director, the city treasurer, the internal auditor positions vacant for not months but years, all at the same time, it means we lack the checks and balances necessary to make sure that your tax dollars are being protected. That's why I led the effort for a city audit 2 years ago. Yes, it's expensive. I don't know that it has to be as expensive as represented. However, it's also a 3-year process. And with the new city manager, I think it's our responsibility to provide a financial roadmap to identify those issues so that we don't compound the costs. You can't tell me that we shouldn't spend money to find out if we're losing money or wasting money. That's why I've called for the audit, and I encourage the majority of council to join me in that effort.
Thank you very much. Chris Kelly.
The mental health facility that Brian referred to in the last question is Missouri Psychiatric Institute, which exists as a direct result of a bill that I passed in the General Assembly. As to the audit, I signed the petition for the audit because I think it's important to keep the council's feet to the fire, but it's important to remember that we have an annual audit from a major audit, a nationally renowned audit firm every year. The City of Columbia staff is ethical and competent. Should we look at some specific areas? Certainly we should. But much of the push for this big study, that's me, folks, I'm sorry, I'll turn it off in a minute. We need to dispel the mythology that the government of the City of Columbia has giant slush funds. That is simply not true, and it is political demagoguery and should not be listened to.
Thank you very much. Chris, we'll start this next
Let me shut my
question.
phone off before I
Oh,
become
sure, yes, please do.
even
I'll
more of a
speak,
nuisance.
I will speak slowly.
All right.
What do you believe the City of Columbia's role is in addressing climate change?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Number one, after police, number one issue for me. We have the opportunity, because we have a municipal utility, to actually move the needle on carbon. Now, the City of Columbia has a lot of activities that are extremely environmentally appropriate. Many of those, they're all positive. There's 53 of them or something, and I like most all of them. But one is above all the most important. We need to change the movement of carbon. And the most relevant and positive way to do that, and likely way to do that, is to move commercial and residential use during summer peak hours. That should be our target, because it is also the most economically important area to cut energy. And people who might not respond to the environmental message may very well respond to the economic needs of decreasing power during that period of time. So I will fight from the minute I am elected till the minute I leave to change the carbon footprint of the City of Columbia, and my first target will be peak summertime hours.
Thank you very much. Brian Treece.
You know, I'm proud to lead on climate change. When President Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord, I joined with the mayors of Kansas City and St. Louis to form the Mayors for Climate Action. Over 400 mayors representing 70 million people now have joined that effort to adopt those goals and objectives of the Paris Climate Accord. I was proud to appoint the first ever Climate Action and Adaptation Planning Task Force. They've made some very achievable but also some reach goals when it comes to reducing our carbon and municipal emissions footprint by the year 2050. I support a comprehensive array of incentives from making residential and commercial solar easier. I think we need to do a study on how many rooftop solar panels we need to equal 1 kilovolt of power. I think we need to use batteries in our system to create a microgrid to make our city more resilient when it comes to climate change. Look, this is not just about protecting the environment, but that's a good reason to do it. It's also about protecting our economy and growing green jobs. Thank you.
This person lived in Johnson County, Kansas, city of Olathe, for 29 years. And while they were there, just to the north, they did a merger. The county and the city did a merger. And I know this came up, I think, prior to this election getting a little heated up. But this person notes that it was painful at the time, but it paid off pretty well. What are your thoughts on merging the city and the county with some services? Brian Treece, you are first.
You know, I think we cooperate all the time with the county when it comes to economic development issues through our regional economic development initiative. Certainly on our street repairs and street building projects. Scott Boulevard is a perfect example. The road out to Battle High School, a combination of state, county, and municipal issues. But Columbia can't forfeit or convey our control and frankly our funding. We generate most of the revenue when it comes to total tax revenue in the county. And I think we need to maintain authority for that and continue to be a leader. We'll cooperate where we can. Already our new interim police chief is working on a memorandum of understanding with the county sheriff, because we know crime doesn't stop at the city limits. And now for the first time in 9 years, they are having conversations that didn't exist before. Our police officers have arrest authority in the county. County deputies have arrest authority in the city. We're making those types of collaborations more so now with the new leadership at both the city manager level and below.
Thank you. Chris Kelly.
I alluded to the historic poor relationship between the City of Columbia and its sister jurisdictions in my opening comments. The relationship between the city and the school district is as bad as I've ever seen it. The county sued the school, or the county sued the city recently. The fire district is on the verge of suing the city. You who have known me a long time know that if I am mayor of Columbia, we're not going to be suing one another. We're going to be sitting down and working out the problems in rational, intelligent ways. The health department is a classic example of seamless, good relationships. I believe in individual departments, especially within law enforcement. We should encourage those. We cannot probably legally merge because the county's not a home rule county, which it should be, but that's a whole separate question.
Thank you very much. This person writes, our infrastructure is almost as old as our homes, built in around 1910. How does the city, or how should the city select for inclusion things like sewer projects and stuff to maintain our inner city older neighborhoods? And Chris, you are first.
If you think about an area of the city between Garth on the east and Clinkscales on the west and Broadway on the south and the business loop on the north, and I only use that as an example. It's old and flat, isn't it? There's a lot of sewer work that needs to be done in those old neighborhoods, and one of the reasons is because we want to have those neighborhoods healthy for young families when they want to live here. We want to strengthen the affordable housing stock, and that's the right place to start doing it. Not just there, but in neighborhoods like that. I spent a lot of time on infrastructure in Jeff, and here I've worked on a city infrastructure committee, and we need to keep making progress on our sewer and water and our electricity. All of our infrastructure is old. It is not a consolation to know that our infrastructure, although bad, is better than almost every other city, because all American cities have serious infrastructure problems. We need to move forward with infrastructure, especially in some of these tougher, older neighborhoods.
Thank you. Brian Treece.
I think we need to take care of what we have before we bite off more than we can chew. That's one of the reasons I voted against the Henderson branch extension, because it prioritized a $4.4 million sewer extension outside the city limits, when the primary user of that sewer would pay $2,700 to connect to our $4 million asset, and then remain a customer of the Boone County Regional Sewer District, while everybody else in this room paid higher rates to pay off the debt. At the same time, to pay for that project, we'd be taking $2 million out of our sewer enterprise fund that would otherwise go to projects that have already been promised to be delivered, that have already been put out to bid, but are still waiting. Now, in the meantime, we have lined thousands of feet of sewer pipes, but there's still more work to do. And as we continue to grow and annex property, we need to make sure that we're taking care of that oldest infrastructure first. It was one of the reasons why I ran 3 years ago, because we had this proliferation of student apartments downtown, and a disconnect between who paid for that increasing infrastructure. I put that back on the backs of developers instead of ratepayers.
Thank you very much. This next question, Brian, will go back to you first. See, and now I'm out of room here, so I have to make this thing up as I go. What have you done in the recent past to improve the situation of our disadvantaged and minority community members? And if elected or re-elected, what specific items will you pursue?
Well, look, I think diversity and inclusion have been a major cornerstone of our activity for the last 3 years, but we can always do better. I was proud to join with READY, our Chamber of Commerce, the University of Missouri, Shelter Insurance, Central Bank, to sign a statement of community principles that we reject unequivocally any form of discrimination based on gender or race, because we want to be a welcoming community here in Columbia. That means making it easier for people of color to serve on boards and commissions, to make sure that our government reflects the community we serve. I think we can always do better. It's just hard to attract that talented and diverse pool of candidates, whether that means in jobs at the city or appointments to boards and commissions. But I think what we can do is raise the level of awareness and impart this ethos across our entire community to support diversity initiatives.
Chris Kelly.
Signing proclamations is a wonderful and enjoyable activity for any public official. I want you to, do you know what the crack cocaine, powder cocaine disparity is? It is the disparity of sentencing that people who use crack cocaine versus people who use powder cocaine end up with when they're in court. Young African American men primarily use crack cocaine, whereas powder cocaine is very often used much more in the white community. When I was in the legislature, I sponsored and passed the law to change the crack powder cocaine disparity such that those young black kids did not get sentences that were 15 times bigger than white folks who use powder cocaine. The other things I've done personally recently is I coached a lady, an immigrant lady, in passing the citizenship test. She just passed. I'm also involved with trying to get a local businesswoman here who has a felony, get her felony expunged so she can make a living in the community. And I haven't been in office for a while, so those are things that I just did in my private life.
This is the last question of the speed round, gentlemen, and then you'll get to make your closing statements. This one will go to Chris first. When the city advocates for projects, like through a bond issue or a tax, and city staff and city members use specific examples that they will promise to fund, should the council be therefore able to go back and change their minds on what it is they're going to deliver? Did that question make sense?
Yep.
All right.
One of the most important things for a government is to keep its word. Right now, there are significant portions of this community who are incensed that the city of Columbia does not keep its word on things exactly like this. If I am mayor, we're going to keep our word. And that's going to matter because I'm going to ask the business community and the progressive community to come together and work out a sweet spot on development costs. What can we do to increase development costs in a way that everyone can live with? That's a tough battle, and you can't go there if you don't have some widespread credibility. I believe that my experience in bringing people together on things just like that is such that we can get the job done.
Thank you very much. Brian Treece.
I'm very proud of the promises our city government has kept. You know, the council is given a list of projects that is put before voters, but that's not on the ballot. And oftentimes, the only way you know about those projects is if you attended one of the public information meetings about that ballot issue or that city council meeting. Once those projects are approved, then we have a public improvement process with a number of public hearings, 9 votes before those projects are ever put out to bid. You know, I'll bring up two instances. One is the option A, high voltage power lines that would have went through residential neighborhoods, schools, and churches. Council put pause on that project, press pause on that project. Staff later determined that the capacity wasn't there, that the demand wasn't there to necessitate that project. On the Henderson Branch sewer, voters approved $2.6 million. The project came in at 4.4. I can't in good conscience spend your tax dollars outside the city limits without some type of connection fee or user participation. So I think the process we have now works well and it has that flexibility that taxpayers deserve.
We will now have 1-minute closing statements in reverse ballot order. Chris Kelly, you may proceed.
Since 1977, the people of Columbia and Boone County have given me the opportunity to serve them in public office. I am immensely grateful to you for that and have tried to be worthy of your confidence. The record demonstrates that my service has been productive, both for this community and for the state. Columbia needs to restore public trust in the police department, to significantly reduce our carbon footprint, to improve our public transportation, and to rebuild our relationships with the school district, the county, and the fire district. We need a mayor who can restore our long tradition of ethical and cooperative government. My experience bringing people together to work for a common cause demonstrates that I can meet that challenge today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chris Kelly. Brian Treece.
You know, Columbia is the crown jewel of cities in Missouri. But we need steady leaders and steady leadership to continue the progress we've made. I'm running for mayor to continue that progress by reining in taxpayer giveaways to wealthy special interests by making our government open, honest, and transparent, and making sustainability and diversity permeate everything that we do. Look, I respect Chris Kelly's 38 years in public service, but the future of Columbia is not a return to yesterday. As your mayor, I led the fight for a city audit and new ethics rules. We added police and 2 new fire stations without raising taxes. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Columbia's police officers, firefighters, the Sierra Club, our Como Safe Water Coalition. And if we continue to strengthen and protect our neighborhoods and invest in our city's infrastructure and public safety here at home, Columbia's best days are ahead of us. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your consideration.
Gentlemen, thank you for participating tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. Both our mayoral candidates will be with me on KFRU next Wednesday, so be sure and tune in. The League of Women Voters, KFRU, and the Columbia Public Library thank all of the candidates.